Okay, welcome back. It's August 4th. Hard to believe. If you're in Australia or something, it's already August 5th. Anyways, miscellaneous word problems. It's more of this stuff. This is actually a continuation of a lesson that we had in December of 2014, where we had some of these word problems. And there were a few others in the session. We didn't finish that, so that's what we're doing. But welcome back. Again, copyright notice. These problems come from gmatprep, unless we say they don't. So, and when we put multiple choice problems up on the board, please use this area to answer them. Okay, let's do one. How about something like this one? Okay, remember multiple choice answers here. Give it a shot. Okay, remember how time management works in this exam. Basically, the essence of time management is you need to know when you're stuck, and if you're stuck, you need to just pick something, or try something else that you haven't already tried. But remember that overall, this test doesn't really have time pressure. It only has time pressure if you accidentally impose time pressure on yourself. And the way that you do that is by staring at problems or by doing random work that isn't really work or that isn't really productive or aims at any sort of goal. So just remember that, right? Like, while people pick their answers, just a quick reminder. I mean, there's basically time management in this test. The main components of that are, first main component is you have to acknowledge, you have to be super honest with yourself about when you're stuck. And if you're stuck, you should either try some other approach, or if you can't think of one, just quit. And then the other thing that goes underappreciated by a lot of people is that when it's time to guess, like when you are in a situation where you're stuck and genuinely not getting anywhere, you have to just guess without further delay. I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, I've actually worked with a lot of students who otherwise have pretty decent time management habits, but the problem is whenever they have to make a guess, there's like 15 additional seconds of hesitation before they pick a number or before they pick a choice. That's the real killer there, because remember the way this test works. I mean, everybody, and I mean everybody, is going to be guessing like, I don't know, 30 problems or something on this test. So if you wait for like, it might not seem like a big deal to let 10 or 15 seconds slip by before you make a guess. But remember, if you're doing that every single time, that's going to add up to enough time for like 4, 5, 6 problems, right? So, and there are a lot of students who do that. Like they wait 15 more seconds to make every guess, and then they don't finish by about 4 or 5 problems. Don't be one of those. Okay. So this problem appears to be a challenge. What I mean by that is that I don't usually put the answer distribution up on the board, but people are kind of all over the place on this one. So let's let's take a look. I mean, but you can't let guessing take time. I mean, guessing is guessing. I mean, it needs to take exactly 0 seconds. There needs to be no time that elapses between realizing that you have to guess and then guessing. I mean, if you've eliminated some choices already, that's fine. But if you're talking about some sort of educated process of elimination, that's not guessing yet. Like that's still an approach to the problem. Like you're still doing something that is genuinely problem solving at that point. We're talking about once you hit that point where you realize that among the choices that you have left, that you have to make a guess. I mean, it might not be all 5 choices, but I mean, guys, like if you need a rule for how to make random guesses, then make one. Like that probably sounds stupid, but remember that any rule for random guessing is as good as any other rule for random guessing because it's random. So it's kind of like in basketball games, you have that possession era thing that just randomly gives the ball to either team in alternating sequence. Same sort of thing here. Like you could have a rule like that. Okay, next time I guess, I'm going to pick the first one that's left. Next time I guess, I'm going to pick the last one that's left. Next time I guess, I'm going to spell out words like tab and ace and bad babe. I mean, you can do that, guys. It's a thing. Like any rule for random guessing is just as good as any other one. Okay. Let's talk about this. So with word problems in general, I mean, why do people find word problems hard? Well, if you think about it, it's because they don't approach them in the way that people approach them in the real world. Right? Think about it for a second. When people approach problems in the real world, like think about that for a second. Because in the real world, people do not find word problems as hard as other problems. I mean, they don't. I mean, for example, if you're doing, I mean, in the real world, most people are much more comfortable with word problems, so to speak, than with not word problems. I mean, for example, if you were doing taxes and you had to deduct 2% of your gross income from your business deductions, that is a lot easier for most people to handle than just multiply this random number by 0.02 and subtract it from this other random number. I mean, most people would be much more comfortable when the words mean stuff. So in the real world, factually, word problems are easier for people. And this is the point. Let's talk about why that is. Like if you're doing something like your tax deductions or some sort of balance sheet or anything that is a word problem in the real world, what do you, okay, you open up your computer and you use like what program, maybe? Like what is a program that people use to approach a lot of real world word? Yeah, like Excel, right? So now think about the way that people do this. When people make Excel sheets, when you first make an Excel sheet, the Excel sheet is empty. That doesn't sound like a huge genius realization until you realize that it basically is one. So like, think about how much that contrasts with the way people do like school problems. I mean, the first thing people do is to physically organize the situation. This is like making an empty Excel sheet. And even when people make empty Excel sheets, they're not doing math yet. Ignore numbers. Ignore math relationships. All you're doing is you're just organizing the stuff in the problem. So let's talk about this problem, right? Like what things are in this problem? there's not a ton of different things in this problem, but let's talk about what is there. I mean, we're not literally making an Excel sheet, but we want to organize this in some sort of way. So what things are in this problem? Like what stuff can we put into a diagram? You got districts, okay. And what, are there 11 different, like are we going to need to make 11 columns? Like notice we've got that, and we've got that. So I mean, with these kind of optimization problems, there are some problems like this where you would need to make a different column for everything. Those are the ones where it's like everything is a different integer. That's a different sort of situation, because then you would have to literally have 11 different numbers. But here, if you look at what we've got, we have, because right now we're not paying attention to math relationships. Like this is not, we don't care about this yet, because that's later, right? That's the kind of thing that becomes an Excel formula once you have an Excel sheet. So you got selective attention here is the point. So the deal is that there is a least populated district which is distinct from all the others. And then you have like 10 other districts, and there's no reasonable reason to think that those 10 other districts would be different in any way. So yeah, so we just physically organize this stuff, okay. Sure. Well, we've got number of districts times population. And I mean, this is not the only way to organize it, this is a way to organize it. So you could do this, like population per each district, and then total. And then you just have two different kinds here, right? You have that single least populated district, which is one district. And then you have basically others. And like, the point is that you can always adjust these kinds of diagrams or charts, right? If it turns out that you need to distinguish among the other districts, then you can always go back and do that. You can always adjust just like if this was literally an Excel sheet, you can always add more rows to an Excel sheet. So how many of these are there? How many others? We have 10, right? There's 11 districts total. Okay. And then if we have an overall population of 132,000. So there. Okay, now what we're doing at this point is we are, because we've already organized this, we have a sheet. So now this is where we get all of the information from the problem statement. And you want to do this all at once. All at once, one piece of information at a time. This is important too because like people waste a lot of time on these problems, and the reason why they do is they don't get all the information at the same time. Like they'll go get one piece of information, scratch it down, try to do a bunch of stuff, and then go back up, down, etc. I mean, you want to just get all of this. So here's the basically you should only have to go through the problem statement twice. The first time is to make the Excel sheet, so to speak, and the second time is to get all of the information. So let's do it. Population of 132,000, okay, we got that. 11 districts, we got that because we got a 1 and a 10. When you see no district is to have a population that is more than 10% greater, how are we going to use that information? Realistically speaking. Yeah, so this means the maximum for the others is 10% more than this. But remember, you're trying to minimize this. So what are you going to do with all of the others? Yeah, you're just going to make them all. Like, I mean, this is, and because you've already set this up, you can put all of your mind to understanding this kind of thing, right? The point is that since if you want the smallest number to be as small as possible, you can you should just make all the others as big as possible. Which is not, you don't need to memorize that or anything. This is really just common sense in other situations. Like if I want to have as much time on some day to work on taxes or something as possible, that means I need to spend as little time that day doing anything else as possible. It's the same thing as that, right? So the deal is that in this column, the others should all be 10% greater than the least populated. You just write that down. I mean, write this down in some sort of way. You can abbreviate a little bit, but just write it. Write it so that you don't have to keep looking at the problem statement, guys. Okay, we use that. And then this is the goal of the problem. Goal. This is the thing we want. All right. Cool. Notice, if they stole the problem statement from us right now, if they just took it away, we would not care. That is the point. If you do step 2 correctly, steps 1 and 2, like once you finish these 2 steps, you should never have to look at the problem statement ever again. I mean, that's a criterion that is pretty much unbullshittable and unmistakable. Like either you have to look back at it or you don't. If you have to look back, fail of organization is basically the point. So, and again, if you're wasting tons and tons and tons and tons of time on these problems, that's the reason why you are doing that. It's because you're grabbing individual pieces of information haphazardly instead of just getting all of it at once. Okay, so one way we can do this is, we could do this algebraically, but how can we do this problem without algebra? Remember that these are supposed to be the answer. Like these numbers are supposed to be that. So what is a non-algebraic way to do this? Yeah, you can just back solve. You can just throw in the answer choices. Absolutely you can. So let's do that. if we're going to do that, like which answer choice should we start with? We should start with D, dog, because that is clearly the easiest number to work with here. Remember, you don't get a calculator on this test, so we would like to not work with nasty numbers if we don't have to, is the point. Yeah, I mean, if you're saying C here, that just means that someone once like told you to start in the middle and you just kind of memorize that. Don't memorize strategies, guys. I mean, think about it. You don't get a calculator. So let's use 11,000 because it sucks a lot less than all the other numbers do. So let's try D. D is the friendliest. So start there. If this is 11,000, then the others would be 10% greater than 11,000. I mean, interestingly enough, even if all 5 choices are equally easy to use, picking C first is still worse than picking B or D first. I mean, the difference is really small, but like it's small enough that no one should care. But in fact, starting in the middle is actually slightly worse than starting with B or D anyway. But that's not the point. The point is that you should start with numbers that are not crappy numbers. So, okay, 10% more than 11,000 is 11,000 plus 1,000, plus 1,100 rather. So that's 12,100. So 12,100. So this is a total population of 110. Sorry, just 11,000, and this is a population of 121,000. Oh, hey, look at that. That works. We're done. If it was too small or too big, we would adjust accordingly. But this works, so this is the right answer. You can do that thing. Any questions about back solving? You can also do this algebraically. Let's talk about that real quickly. Here's the thing. I mean, the point is that you do all this organizational stuff before you even decide how you're going to solve the problem. So here's our organizational device. The point is that you do all of that before you make any decisions about how you're going to actually solve the problem. So if we do this algebraically, you can use the same organizational device. Okay. Let's just put an X here. If that's an X, then what's this? It's 10% more than X, right? So if we combine those pieces of information, then, yeah, these are 1.1X each. So 10% more than X, which is 1.1X. And then so 10 times 1.1X is 11X, and 1 times X is just 1X. So there. So X plus 11X is 132,000. So 12X is 132,000. And if you just do long division, then that gives you X is 11,000. So look at that. Good stuff. So you can back solve it. You can do algebra. Remember, when you review these problems, your only goal should be to collect as many of these methods as you can. Like, no one cares about, oh, this method is a little bit faster or easier. That's not the point. The point is that you want to be able to do these in as many different ways as you can. So, but notice the main point is that all of this organizational stuff happens before you even decide which method you're going to use. So, like all of it, all of step 1 and step 2 here, you make the device, you fill it in information, then you decide things like back solving or algebra. You don't even do that until then. These are so close together that I don't know how you would make an educated guess. I mean, if these were super far apart, then maybe, but not with numbers that are this close together. At least I don't see any way to do that. Okay, let's move on. I don't understand, but okay, let's do another one. Let's try this one. Remember where you find the answer choices. Okay. Go for it. All right, let's wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Remember again, the essence of time management is, am I stuck? Am I not stuck? Blah, 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 blah. And then if I am stuck, I should stop what I'm doing, or at least very quickly go to something else. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about it. I mean, so remember with time management, I mean, not really kidding about how there are only 2 aspects to it, which are, am I stuck or not? And when I have to guess, can I guess? Like, you should never worry about minutes and seconds. I swear you shouldn't, because you just don't need to. Like, if you have those 2 things down, if you can actually be honest with yourself about whether you're stuck and you can actually move on when you are stuck, the time pressure will not happen. It just won't. It just won't be a thing. So thinking about minutes and seconds is the wrong way to think about it, because you shouldn't need external regulators on that. You should be able to regulate your own time management, is basically the point. So okay, let's pick an answer in multiple choice section, guys. Okay, let's do that. And then let's talk about organizing this thing. Like what? Remember, the first step is to physically organize. Don't pay attention to the numbers yet. So physically organize it. In other words, it's like an empty Excel sheet. So what stuff? By the way, as far as people's answers, it looks like people about equally like choice C and choice E here. So interesting. It's like an exact bimodal split. And what stuff is in the problem? When you say C as a trap, that's a different story. I mean, C trap is when you have 2 pieces of information that, like, very obviously are complete together, which is that's not what's happening here. Because I mean, in situations where choice C is a trap answer, both C and E are wrong. So that's a totally different animal. There are there are actually sessions of this study hall that are entirely dedicated to C as a trap answer. You can check those out if you want. But, okay. So what stuff is in here? Well, we've got the cost of producing the units per month. And then remember we like literally ignore all numbers and ignore all equations and ignore all relationships that are mathematical. I mean, we're just single-minded. Ignore all numbers at this point. Ignore all math relationships. And just look at what the stuff is. So we have the cost of producing stuff per month. And then here is a number of units. And then here is a sales price. And here is a profit. So, and then revenue from the sale, that's total sales stuff as well. And then this is cost of production, and this is cost of production as well. So if we want to color code this stuff, these are sales numbers, these two are. And then gross profit is the difference. So there. And then of course the unit production is kind of all of those things, right? So we can make that sort of gray. So you have production costs, you have revenue from sales, and you also have gross profit. Okay. So let's look at it. So we have costs, production costs, and we have revenues. And we have gross profit. And then some of these are per unit. So like revenue at least is per unit. So number of units, and then per unit, and then total. So, okay. I mean, not all of these. For example, we're not calculating a gross profit per unit. So that's not an issue here. And we're also not doing that either. The gross profit is just going to be subtracting those two. And then also notice that production costs are not calculated per unit either. They're just directly a formula. So that's going to be, these are not going to be filled in here either. Okay. So these are the only things we're really going to use. And remember that you should also make 2 copies of any chart that you do make, because it's data sufficiency, right? I mean, data sufficiency problems are actually 2 problems, not 1. So we should make 2 copies of any chart that we make. So there, statement 1, statement 2. There's no need to make a 3rd copy, because if we do combine the statements, we can just import data from one of these charts into the other one. So, okay. And then we want to know what this is. This is the goal. So look at that. All right. So, and this is 1,000 units in both problems. And let's see what we have. So statement 1, last month, the revenue from the sale of these units was 150,000. So, and notice when we say use the information, so get all the information. With a data sufficiency problem, that means for statement 1, we have this plus the paragraph, and for statement 2, we have this plus the paragraph, right? So this means that the revenue per unit is 150. But what else is also the revenue per unit? Like what did we just find out here? 150 equals. Yeah, that's k plus 60. So now we have that k is 90. So all right. And then production cost is k, so that's 90x plus t, and x is 1,000. So yeah, so 90 times 1,000 plus t. So that's 90,000 plus t. So the problem here is that the t is still there. So this is going to be negative 60,000 plus t. So this is not sufficient. Statement 2, so the cost of producing 500 units in a month is, so actually we don't use the chart for this because this is not for the 1,000 things. So we can just scratch that off. And we can say for 1,000 units, the cost is k times 1,000 plus t. And for 500 units, the cost is k times 500 plus t. And if you subtract those, the difference is 45,000. And that's 500k. Well, this is k equals 90. If you knock off some zeros, right? So 5k, knock off 2 zeros. So k is 90. The problem is that this is definitely not sufficient because we still don't, I mean, this tells us nothing about profit or 1,000 items at all. So this by itself is still not sufficient. But also, if you notice, we already know in statement 1 that k is 90. So there's no, we don't even have to do any work to combine these statements because there's no new information. Like we don't find out anything. Like this doesn't actually contribute anything over and above statement 1. So this means that statement 1 is not sufficient, which means that they're still not sufficient when you combine them. So this is E, elephant. Still not sufficient. So there's a lot of people take C on this problem. Lots and lots of people. That was actually the majority answer here. So maybe that was just guessing, but if you organize this stuff, then you can be sure that you've used everything. That's the biggest perk of organizing these things like this, is that you can be sure that you have actually used all of the information and there's nothing else lurking there, right? So statement 1, you have found all of it and you're good. So, Any questions about this? Another way that you can approach this, incidentally, is you can do as much work up front. What do you mean by substitution? Substitution of what? What are you, how would you substitute something for T? Like what would you substitute and where? I mean, you can explain. I'm not sure what substitution you're talking about, but because there's, you don't have 2 equations that you can plug something into here. But I mean, yeah, if you organize this stuff, then you'll see what you got. Is the formula for C a red herring? Not really sure what you're asking me, but I mean, again, what you guys don't want to do is that you don't want to overthink these things before you start doing the work. I mean, like, basically, don't try to be too smart here. Like, don't try to look at this stuff and anticipate what's going to happen. Like, don't do it. Just put the stuff in there and do it. I mean, the only time you want to ever think about that kind of stuff ahead of time is when you have 2 pieces of information, statement 1 and statement 2, that are like obviously everything together. Because then that's going to be one of those C traps. That's a different story. We actually have a whole Thursdays. There's a bunch of Thursday sessions that are just about C traps, but that's not what's happening here. This is not that kind of thing. So thinking about that kind of stuff at the beginning of this problem is literally just a waste of your time. I mean, you should just do the work and not do the work. I mean, the formula might be a distraction and it might not, and there's no way to tell. So there's no point in even bothering to think about that. I mean, again, I tell this to all my classes too, but you know, I've taught standardized tests for like 25 years, and I have multiple perfect scores on this one, and I can't look at these problems and guess whether statements are distractions or not. So it's not like anyone else can either. Like that, don't even try that. Just do the problem. Don't try to be too smart with the guessing what they're doing. Just do the work. Like what you can also do here is you can do this stuff up front, right? You can actually take these algebraic formulas and put them in there. So we have 1,000 units at kx plus t, so that's 1,000 k plus t. And then the revenue is 1,000 units times a unit revenue of k plus 60. So that's 1,000 k plus 60,000. Actually, okay, I subtracted backwards on the other slide. This should have been plus 60,000 minus t because it's actually revenue minus cost. So it's the middle row minus the top row, not the top minus the middle. So that was my backwards before. So what you're doing is you're subtracting these. So 1,000K cancels out, and you just get 60,000 minus T. Aha. So this is the goal. The goal is to find this. Once you realize this is a much more efficient process because you need to realize that there's two realizations you can make. The first realization is all I need is T. So T is the only thing that's relevant at the end of the day. But then the other thing is the problem statement doesn't give us any way to find T. So ultimately, if the statements don't let us find T, they're not sufficient. If you realize that, you can zip through this one pretty efficiently, right? Because there's nothing about T here. I mean, revenue has nothing to do with T. So there's no point in even setting this up, actually. So not sufficient. And then if you set up statement 2 the way we did in the last page, then T cancels out, like it did here. So there you go. If you set this up, T cancels out. So not sufficient. And then when you combine them, you still have nothing about T. So this is still choice E. So the takeaway that you should get from this is that it's always a good idea to do as much work up front as you can. Like it's pretty much universally recommended that you should do that because the process is much more efficient when you can. You should always as much work up front as you possibly can. You should just do it because that makes the whole thing more efficient. Okay, let's try to knock out one more of these. Do it. How about this one? And I mean, the other thing that's important to remember about these problems is that they never contain excess words just to be mean. I mean, that's not how they work. Like, the problems do have lots of words in them, but this is not like, okay, they're throwing lots of words in there to make the problem annoying and difficult. I mean, the problems have a lot of words because if you express mathematical things in words, they have lots of words. That's the point. So that's the other thing to remember is that they're not making these things wordy and tricky on purpose. And if you think that they are, then you're going to waste a lot of time thinking that. So just keep that in mind. Okay, go for it. Okay, remember guys, time management means acknowledge when you are stuck. Be honest with yourself about it. And then take a guess if you have to take a guess. It's mostly the middle of the alphabet. It's not good. That's not picking choices here. Like all of the N and R people, except for like one. And then also Vivek and Wang and Yuck, yeah. But okay, let's pick things, guys. Let's pick choices. remember what the situation is. You want to physically organize the problem first. And then we want to, after we physically organize, we want to get the information out of the problem. And only then pick a strategy and try it. Okay, let's physically organize stuff. So notice what we've got here. We have production per month. We have shipping per month. No storage costs, so there's no reason to notice what isn't in the problem. So no storage costs is not really a thing here. But it paid storage costs per rate from, okay, certain months. And then we want a total storage cost. All right. I notice that storage costs are only March through October. So what do we have here? So we have storage costs are per rate. So, and it looks like it's going to be different for each month, right? Because they are shipping a certain number of rakes every month. So let's just make March through October is just, what is that? That's like 8 months. So we can just make 8 rows. We can say March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. And again, this is one of those things where you really just want to do it and not worry about, oh, that might take too long. I mean, if it turns out that you can compact this work, then great. If it turns out that you can't, then oh well. That's basically the point. So storage costs per rake. So storage costs. And then that's going to be multiplied by the number of rakes. And then that's going to equal a total storage cost. Okay. Look at that. All right, and then produced X rakes. So now we got to fill this stuff in because the total cost is going to be. We just want the total of all of these cells here. That's the thing we want. Okay. Well, then we can let's make row dividers. Because that would be kind of hard to follow if we don't. All right, good enough. The storage cost per rake is 10 cents every time. So this is going to be, everything is just going to be 0.10. So we just need numbers of rakes. Okay. What's this? Like what X rakes each month from November through February. I mean, you could make a chart for this sort of thing if you really felt compelled to, but the November through February thing, you should kind of just be able to do that without having to actually fully set it up. But by all means, you should set it up as much as you want. Like I personally have to write out those months to figure out how many months there are. So November, December, January, February is 4 months. So that's 4x rakes produced. And then notice what you have to do, and like this is the kind of thing that would be sort of overwhelming if you were trying to organize the problem and think about it at the same time. But it's not very overwhelming if you're just thinking about it. Is what is this business about the beginning of the month? Well, this means that you have to knock off half x before you make these entries. That's the point. So like there's no entry that says 4x, for example, because you actually ship out some of those before you store. And like so some of them never get stored, in other words. So this is going to be, so the first thing to notice is there's no more production. Like you don't make any more rakes at all. And then, and then on top of that, you have to deduct half x each time before making each entry, because it's the beginning of the month. So like the ones you ship at the beginning of March don't have to be stored, for instance. Smiley face if that makes sense. So like the first entry is 3.5x and not 4x. That's the important thing to realize. There's probably an answer choice in here somewhere that corresponds to not doing that. Like if you made the first entry 4x, then that might be one of the wrong answers. So this is going to be 3.5x, and then every time you just ship out half x rakes. So this is going to be 3x, 2.5x, 2x, 1.5x, 1x, 0.5x, and then nothing. So, well, this is just, you just move the decimal point. So if we add this up, okay, that's 0.65, that's 0.9, that's 1.1, that's 1.25, that's 1.35, and that's 1.4. So the total is 1.4x. You can also pick numbers. That's true. This is also a smart numbers type of situation. I mean, you're not really doing anything with x that is algebraically non-trivial. So picking numbers here won't make this problem any easier. But what it might do is, if you have a hard time thinking of 3.5x as like a number of something, then having actual numbers might help you conceptualize that. So that's you can also pick smart numbers, yes. Although if you organize this well enough, then even if that conceptual thing is a little bit, even if it's conceptually weird to think of 0.35x as a number of dollars, if you have this organized well enough, then actually it doesn't even matter, because you can just do it. It's like an Excel sheet that runs itself. So, I mean, honestly, if there's one takeaway from this problem that is most important, It's that you should just do stuff. I mean, like the biggest reason why people would get this problem wrong is because they don't want to make 8 rows. That's the reason. No, 8 rows is too many rows. No, not really, guys. I mean, this didn't take that long. I mean, just in general, this way of thinking, I don't want to do whatever thing because I'm afraid it might take too long. If your goal is to get the lowest possible score on the GMAT that you can get, this is a great way to achieve that goal. This will practically guarantee success if that's your goal. Otherwise, don't do it. I mean, just remember the cardinal rules of life here, guys. Do stuff. Don't not do stuff. There you go. I mean, because what's weirdest about this is that people who think this don't have other backup plans, which is why it's so weird. Because like if you had 2 possible ways of approaching this, and then you thought, okay, I don't want to do that first way because maybe that would take too long, and I can try this other way instead. See, that would just be intelligent economic decision making. That would just be like, okay, I'm going to try what I think is most efficient first, which is a great way to do stuff. But the problem is that people don't do that. The problem is that people have one possible way of doing this and no backups, no plan B, and they still think this. Like, that's what's weird about it. But they literally can only think of one way to try the problem, and still they don't do it. Like, guys, what? Just make sure you don't do that. Don't self-defeat here. It's a really big problem. Because, because also people are really bad at guessing how long things will take, too. That's another thing. Like, people really suck at that. Like, if people drive around parking lots for 10 minutes trying to find a spot that will save them 30 seconds of walking, instead of just parking at the back of the lot and walking. And they genuinely think they're saving time by doing that, which is the funny part. So just make sure that you don't think like that. It's honestly a surprising fraction of your success in this test will depend on just these 2 things. Do stuff and don't not do stuff, I swear. I mean, also your success in life, but that's a different story. Okay, let's kill it. It is time. So thank you. The next session should be in 2 weeks. I think on the 18th. I think we're going to be going back to the original timing, which is 2 hours earlier than this. So. But check the web just to make sure. Just check the Thursdays page and make sure that's true. But I think it's 2 weeks from now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Every session is recorded, and the recordings are kept in perpetuity. There's only one web page for this whole Thursdays program, so the recordings are there. The cat test sold on, all right, I'm going to turn off the recording, guys.